This video is your overview of the Psychology in the News paper presentation project. This project is intended to go throughout the semester and then will be broken up into small chunks, so it's a little easier to manage. The rationale behind the assignment, as I see it, psychological science is routinely discussed in the news media as well as on social media and other places where you access information. For most people, their access is through the popular press and through social media. I'm always exposed to and interested in the way in which people outside of the field interpret and then apply information coming from psychological research. Sometimes people do this, whether they're news reporters or just, influencers on social media. Sometimes their coverage of the research is thoughtful and carefully constructed. Other times, though, those descriptions can be incomplete and possibly misleading. So in this assignment, I'm giving you an opportunity to play around with a topic of your choosing, look at how the research is being presented, look at the new research on this topic that you're interested in, and explore some of the limitations of presentations in the popular press or in social media of science. And, in our current climate, that's a really important question, whether you're talking about psychological science or science coming out of biology or chemistry or any of the various areas that you'll study as a college student. If you are a Mount Union student and you're taking this course as a Foundations S course, this assignment and its two components, the paper and the presentation, can be a part of your Rader Foundations portfolio for written and oral communication if you choose to do that. If you're not a Mount Union student, the paper is flexibly designed so that you can still meet all of the learning outcomes that I have set out for this paper without needing to worry about the Rader Foundations portfolio piece of it. The purpose of the research paper is to guide you through the process of identifying a topic that matters to you, but that is also covered in your textbook, because that will be one of your sources that you'll be using in the process. Why am I making it connected to the textbook? I wanted there to be a clear through line between what you're learning in class, as you read, as you listen to and watch the video lectures. I want there to be a clear connection between that content and what you choose to explore in your research paper. Now, I'm not expecting that you're going to find a connection that is necessarily deep and broad. This is an intro course. Your textbook doesn't do much of anything deep and broad. It's what we call an overview survey course that covers a lot of territory without a great deal of depth. So all I'm asking is that your topic be actually covered in the textbook, at least in a limited way. The next sort of set of purposes has to do with identifying stories about your topic that involve recently published research. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to use some verifiable sites that actually employ freelance writers with science experience and people who work within the field or who have worked in the field as your popular press outlets. I'm going to discourage you from just doing a Google search and trying to find news outlets presenting psychological research. So I want to make this as straightforward as possible for you, and I think that's the best way to do that. Through your exploration, I want you to learn about some of the expected limitations of these digested descriptions of psychological research. And this is true of any sort of science that's presented in the popular press. You have science writers, sometimes freelance writers without science experience, who attempt to make sense of research and find themselves out of their depth. So they may, overgeneralize, they may misunderstand, and then publish their misunderstandings to the wider world. Finally, I want you to think about and reflect on how exploring your topic of interest in the form of new research has prompted you to ask more questions about it, and then how it will shape sort of your future consumption of psychological science. My hope is that after doing this exercise of working through this paper, you will be able to, if you're watching, scrolling videos on TikTok or whatever, someone talks about a research study that ... You will know that you can go to reliable sources, you can pursue more information. So rather than just sort of without mindful attention allowing that description to sit there, you know that you can go further and find more information about it to verify claims. Fact-checking is more important now than ever, given just the sheer scope and density of information that we're exposed to all the time. So hopefully that will give you some tools for doing that kind of work. The presentation assignment is designed to meet the requirements of oral communication in Foundations courses, but it also gives you a chance to talk about your topic, to explore your interest in it, and share it in a way that, if you choose to, you could share with other people. You get to describe how your topic, the topic of your research, was covered in the textbook. You can talk about your 3 sources and what new research, excuse me, is pursuing in that area, and then talk about limitations and future explorations of psychological science. I will leave you to read the learning outcomes as they're listed here on your own. They very much mirror the purpose of each of the 2 assignments, the research paper and the presentation. The requirements that I've laid out for both the paper and the presentation, if you follow these requirements, you should be pretty well set to construct a paper that isn't difficult to write, because it's not my intention to overface you, to have this assignment be like overwhelming and only a handful of people are going to be successful in doing it well. That's really not how I do things. In terms of required elements for the paper, you need to have a title that makes clear the topic that you're exploring. So you shouldn't have a title that says PSY 110S paper. That's not appropriate. I want you to have a 1 or 2, I say 1 paragraph here, but 1 or 2 paragraphs introducing your topic and explaining why you're interested in it, and then connecting it to your textbook. And that's why it could be 2 paragraphs, depending on how you write it. So I want you to introduce your topic, connect it to your textbook, including in-text citations for your textbook. The next component, which is the longest component of the paper, is the summaries of the 3 articles. Your summary should include a description of the research question that was being explored, a description of research methodology, description of findings, and then finally conclusions. The combined, it should be a minimum of 3 pages. And then for number 4, I want you to give me an explanation with at least 3 concrete examples of limitations. Like what wasn't there that would have helped you understand the research better? What further information could have been presented that wasn't? 5, I want you to reflect on what you learned by telling me at least 2 things thoroughly, what you learned about your topic through exploring new research in this area. And then talk about what you still want to know. And I want to know at least 2 things you still want to know about your topic. Finally, I want you to explore how you will go about consuming psychological science in the future. This should be a paragraph, and it should contain at least 2 impacts of the work. In terms of technical requirements, these papers need to be between 5 and 8 pages. That does not include the title and reference pages. Do not manipulate your font size or your margin size in order to make the paper requirement or the page requirement. And also, don't go to AI and say, hey, my paper's too short. Can you make it longer? Yeah, there are things that do that, and it's super wrong, and as stated in the syllabus, will get you failed. Second technical requirement, you need to use Word. Microsoft Word is kind of the standard here at the university, and as students, you should have access to it. If you are not a Mount Union student and you don't have any access to Word, please reach out to me and we'll talk about alternate solutions. Papers submitted in PDF won't be accepted because what happens when I have to convert a PDF to Word in order to provide you with feedback, the formatting gets messed up. And formatting matters when you're doing a research paper of this kind because you have to use proper formatting for APA style. I require that you use double-spaced text and 12-point font. APA style now allows 2 fonts, Times New Roman and Calibri. Super annoying, but there it is. APA style also demands a 1-inch margin. And that includes, page numbers up at the top right. You have to use a reference page in APA style, and you have to use APA style when you're making in-text citations. Now, I will warn you, there are lots of citation and reference generators out there. They are only as good as the AI used to do them. I have found that some of the preferred programs for generating references among my students, the programs don't work particularly well. And in fact, you have them create your base reference. That can be helpful, but then you have to go back and double check that all of the rules have been followed. And I'll make a separate video about the reference page just so I can show you what I mean. The presentation requirements, there are some required PowerPoint elements that you have to follow. You have to have your title on the title slide that makes clear what your topic is. Now, most students are going to want to just use the same title they had on their paper. You need an introductory slide and an explanation of your interest, a slide describing what you learned about your topic from your text, summaries of your articles, 1 slide per article, a discussion of limitations of the articles, a slide describing what you learned about your topic through the full project, a reflection on your future consumption, and then finally a slide for your references. When you actually record your oral presentation, the recording must be a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 8 minutes. The oral presentation for the IC has to be accompanied by a PowerPoint, and I am providing you with a template that you can use to build your presentation. Your PowerPoint must include on-slide citations of the references on the reference slide. The reference slide does need to be basically in APA style. One of the problems with PowerPoint, it doesn't make hanging indents either easy or possible in some ways. So I tend to be pretty lenient there, but all of the other rules are in play. One other requirement for the PowerPoint recording is that your face needs to appear on the slide recording because that's part of the expectations of the IC. Now, in this module on D2L, I've given you all of the steps here outlined as tasks for you to complete as you go along the process, the step-by-step process of completing your assignment. During week 3, you'll be identifying topics you're interested in. before you do that, make sure, and I've gone over a lot of the stuff that's in the assignment sheets, but you should download those assignment sheets, look at them carefully, make sure you understand them. And if you don't, make sure that you ask me questions, either by email or set up an appointment to come talk to me. There are lots of places you can find topics to explore. Your textbook is an obvious one, and since you have to make a connection to your textbook anyway, it's a great place to start. I've also included here links to SciPost, which is a curation website for new research in psychological science, as well as the two major professional organizations in psychology, the American Psychological Association, which tends to lean a little more clinical counseling, a little more applied, and the Association for Psychological Science, which tends to lean a little more research-oriented, but there's a lot of overlap between the two. Now I'll quickly jump over to SciPost. SciPost does have advertising, which is like kind of annoying seeing how it pops up all the time, but it's nice in that you can search some broad categories like mental health, social psychology, cognitive science, pharmacology, neuroscience, etc. But you can also search for topics that you're interested in and find what new research is happening in that area. So if I'm interested in, say, parenting, that's really broad. So it's probably going to pop a lot of results. At least I hope it does. So if I'm looking at recent research on parenting, what you see here listed is, say, helicopter parenting and competence frustration. New study links sexist attitudes in both mothers and fathers to reducing responsiveness, and so on. So each of these has something to do with parenting and is a new study. So whatever topic you're interested in, you can either just browse some of the broad topics like the ones listed at the top, or you can search a specific term if that's what you're interested in. On the APA site, you will see that there are some trending topics. Those may or may not be reports on recent research, but it is organized by area of interest. So for instance, if you click on compassion as a topic, you can see some summaries. And again, not all of these will be research studies, so you'll have to make some choices along the way. There's also this tab at the top where you can look at research topics more broadly, looking at all of the topics. And the search capability is a little more difficult here than in other parts, but so I'll show you, if I search for parenting here, you'll find some articles that are summaries of broad areas, some are opinion. So what you have to look for is articles that they're presenting here that feature new research. The APS website the APA website is very much the same, where you have featured topics that are presented on the APA website in a timely fashion, and then you have all topics. And here you can see that there's just a ton of different topics. If I click on parenting, there are broad things, but then there are also other kinds of articles about parenting, as well as podcasts. So you can look through those and see some of them are coverage of book chapters. That wouldn't be appropriate here. Some of them are policy documents. So you have to be careful in selecting from both the APA site and the APS site that what you're reading about is actually a description of research. So like I said, SciPost has a lot of ads, but it's a really good, well-curated site. The person who runs it is a PhD in psychology. And they actually, there's a nonprofit behind it, and their sole mission is to help people become acquainted with new research. So to be honest, I think your most straightforward path to finding articles for this assignment is to use SciPost. But you're certainly free. You have the right to look in other locations as well. The next step after coming up with your topic is to actually identify your articles. Or identify all of your resources. So first, you have to identify the section of the Griggs textbook that you're planning on using. That includes identifying what chapter and the page numbers that cover your topic. And then you have to identify your 3 popular press articles. And I do include here, these are all live links to articles that I found on SciPost when I searched a topic of interest to me. I'm identifying here the Dropbox for you to submit your articles. You can either submit files or links. If you're using, say the APA, APS, or the SciPost for your articles, links are sufficient. Just make sure that they're correct links and will lead me to the articles you're actually going to use. You may want to copy and paste the material from the article into a Word document, at least temporarily, so that you can, look at it on a screen without having to jump on the internet all the time. But that's completely up to you. The next step is to put together an APA style reference page. That reference page, I've provided you with information from the APA on how to create a reference page. I've also provided you here with a sample, which is the references for these articles, as well as a reference for your textbook. I strongly encourage everyone during week 6 to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me, either online or in person. And you can use my bookings page to make that appointment. The next step is week 7. I give you that week away from new content to work on your paper, and you'll be submitting your first draft. I have created for you a template for the paper, and it's pre-formatted, so it has the right margins, it has the right settings, and all of that. So I strongly encourage you to download and save that, and then use the template to put your paper together instead of trying to do it from scratch. During week 9, you will be submitting your final draft of the paper. During week 10, you'll develop your PowerPoint, and I will assess the PowerPoint. There's a rubric for that. I have, just like with the paper, I've built you a template, a PowerPoint file that you can use to start with. It's flat white, but it has the necessary slides. You can pretty it up to your heart's content. Just make sure that you remember that in your presentation, you have to be visible in a bubble or a square, your preference, on the slide. So make sure that as you build your PowerPoint, you're leaving some space for your lovely face to show up on screen. During week 12, you're going to resubmit, after I give you feedback, your final PowerPoint to that same Dropbox. The last step is your recorded presentation. There are lots of different ways to do recording. I mentioned during the week where this occurs, if you're a Mount Union student, you can go to the DWAC studio and get assistance with recording. If you're not a Mount Union student, you can chat with me and we can talk about resources available to you. But most of us, given our experiences in the pandemic, have learned how to do at least a little recording. So, I tend to use Screencast-O-Matic. That's what it used to be called. It's called ScreenPal now. to do recordings. You can also do your recording directly in PowerPoint, and there are definite advantages to that because you can re-record each slide if you need to by just deleting that section that goes with that slide. And then you have to export the video before you turn it in. So again, I strongly encourage the one-on-one meetings because I can be helpful to you by talking you through some of those steps if you're unfamiliar with them. So my reminder down here at the bottom, this is a project with lots of moving parts, things that are easy to forget. So make sure that you ask questions as you go along.